How does a man lose his wife and his whole business in the same year and still stay calm? Why would a local cop freeze after a simple plate check and say there was a federal flag from 1987? What I saw on his screen made me understand my life was not as small as they wanted it to be. My name is Graham Heller. I am 49 years old. I run a small landscaping business in a town where people talk more than they listen. I am not loud. I do not like fights. I like schedules, clean lines, and work that you can see when it is done. That week started like many others. I woke up before sunrise and sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet. The only sound was the refrigerator and the small click of my pen. I had my notebook open. I wrote the same list I always wrote. Crew hours, fuel, mulch, 2 yards on Tuesday, a hedge job on Wednesday, a cleanup on Friday. Landscaping is simple on paper. In real life, it is weather, timing, and trust. Some months are strong. Some months are thin. When the season shifts, money shifts with it. I had learned to plan around that. I kept a buffer. I kept my equipment clean. I paid my people on time. Leah came into the kitchen while I was doing the numbers. She looked at the list and then looked at my face. She asked me if I was stressed. I told her I was fine, just working the week out in my head. She said her parents wanted us for dinner that night. She said it like it was a normal plan. She also said her father had been asking about my business again. I nodded. I did not argue. We had been married for 11 years. I had learned that when Leah's parents called, it was not really an invite. It was a meeting with plates on the table. Leah got dressed and went to her job. I went out to my truck and drove to my first yard. The air was cool and the grass was wet. My crew met me there. 2 of them were younger men who liked to talk. One was older than them, quiet and steady. I gave the plan for the day. I kept it short. I did not need a speech. They knew the work. While we worked, I kept thinking about that dinner. Ron Pritchard, Leah's father, was not the type to yell. He did not need to. He had a slow voice and a calm face. He could cut you without raising it. He liked to talk about standards, values, and reputation. He liked to talk like he was teaching a lesson. Mara Pritchard, Leah's mother, was polite in a different way. She smiled a lot. She also asked questions that were not really questions. She asked about money, like she was worried. She asked about my plans like she was checking for cracks. Owen, Leah's brother, was 41 and always helpful. He always had ideas. He always had a contact. He always had a way to do something better. He never did the work, but he talked like he owned the work. When he offered help, it felt like a hand on your shoulder that slowly turned into a grip. By late afternoon, I finished my day, cleaned the truck bed, and went home to change. Leah was already dressed. She wore a simple blouse and a calm face. She looked like she was ready to be the daughter they expected. When I put on my clean shirt, she looked at me and adjusted my collar. She told me not to let her father get under my skin. I told her I would be fine. The drive to her parents' home took 20 minutes. Their neighborhood was quiet and neat. Their yard was perfect all year. I knew the type of care it took to keep it like that, and I also knew they did not do it themselves. They paid for it. They liked to act like the neat yard was part of their character. When we walked in, Mara greeted us with a smile and a light touch on Leah's arm. She greeted me too, but her eyes moved past me fast, like she was already checking the room behind me. Ron came in from his study and shook my hand. His grip was firm, but his eyes were flat. Owen was already there. He sat like he belonged everywhere. Dinner smelled good. Mara was a strong cook. The table was set clean. The plates were heavy. The cutlery had weight. Everything in that house had weight. It was a kind of message. We sat down. Ron asked me how business was. I told him it was steady. I told him I was booked out for weeks. I told him the season shift always brought changes, but I planned for it. He nodded like he was listening, but I saw the small look he gave Owen, like a signal. Mara asked how Leah was feeling. Leah said she was fine. Then Mara looked at me and asked if I was taking good care of her. I told her Leah was my priority. I said it simply. I did not add extra words. Ron started talking about security. He said a man should be able to provide without stress. He said a home should not feel uncertain. He said Leah deserved stability. He said it slowly, like each word was a brick. I kept my face calm. I told him my work paid our bills. I told him I had never missed a payment. I told him I kept my business clean and legal. Ron nodded again, like he was letting me speak for my own comfort. Owen leaned forward and asked about my clients. He asked how many were repeat clients. He asked what my biggest account was. He asked what would happen if a few of them left. He said he was only curious, and he wanted to understand. I told him I had a good base. I told him my work was word of mouth. I told him I did not chase flashy jobs. I built trust and kept it. Owen smiled and said that was nice, but he also said trust could change fast. Leah ate quietly. She looked down at her plate when Ron spoke. When I looked at her, she did not meet my eyes. That was not new. It was a pattern. In their house, Leah became smaller. Around them, she went back to being their child. Ron changed the topic to respect. He talked about how people judge a family by the man a daughter chooses. He said people notice things. He said people compare. He said he did not like seeing Leah carry weight that should not be hers. I told him Leah carried nothing alone. I told him we were a team. I said it in a calm tone. I did not raise my voice. I did not try to win the room. I tried to keep peace. Mara asked about children. She asked if we had a plan. Leah said we were still talking. Ron said the timing mattered. He said a woman's time mattered. He said a man who could not set a clear path was not serious. I felt heat in my face, but I kept my voice level. I told him Leah and I made our choices together. Ron looked at me like I was being naive. He said he hoped that was true. Owen then brought up my truck and my equipment. He said he saw an older mower on my trailer last week. He said he hoped I was not cutting corners. He said he knew people who could help me upgrade. He said it like a gift. I knew it was a hook. I thanked him and said my equipment was fine. I said my crew took care of it. I said I bought what I could support, not what looked good. Ron put down his fork and rested his hands on the table. He said he was going to be direct. He said Leah had options. He said she could be with someone who had more status, more security, and more drive. He said he did not understand why she settled. I did not react fast. I let a second go by. I told him Leah did not settle. I told him she chose. I said I respected her choice, and I respected her family, but I would not accept being spoken about like a problem. Ron did not change his face. He said he was not trying to offend me. He said he was speaking the truth. He said love was not enough. He said I was a kind man, but kind was not the same as capable. Mara reached out and touched Leah's hand, like she was steadying her. Leah's shoulders rose slightly, then fell. She did not speak for me. She also did not speak for Ron. She stayed in the middle, where she thought she was safe. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not fear. More like a clean understanding. I saw the shape of the room clearly. They were not asking questions to learn. They were building a case. They wanted Leah to hear their story again and again until it became her story too. I ate a few bites. I thanked Mara for the meal. I kept my voice polite. I asked Ron if he wanted more water. He said no. Then he looked at Leah and said he wanted her to remember her worth. He said he did not want her to waste years. He said he did not want her to carry a man who would always be behind. I watched Leah's face. She swallowed and nodded slightly. That small movement hurt more than Ron's words. Ron then looked at me and said I would never be good enough for their daughter. He said it like it was a simple fact. He said it without heat. That made it worse. It told me he believed it fully. I did not argue. I did not beg. I did not try to prove myself in that moment. I told him I heard him. I told him I respected his right to feel how he felt. I told him I would not stay at the table if the goal was to reduce me. Owen gave a small laugh and said I was being sensitive. He said it was only family talk. He said I should relax. I did not answer that. I looked at Leah and said we should go. Leah hesitated. Mara said Leah should stay and finish eating. Ron said Leah could do what she wanted. His tone carried a message. He wanted her to choose them in front of me. Leah stood up slowly. She picked up her bag. She did not look at her father. She told her mother thank you for dinner. Then she walked with me to the door. Outside, the air was colder. The driveway lights made hard shadows. We got into the car. Leah sat with her hands in her lap. She stared forward for a long moment. I started the engine and waited. I did not rush her. I did not try to force comfort. Finally, Leah said her father was old and stubborn. She said he did not mean it the way it sounded. She said he was worried. I told her his words were clear. I told her worry did not give someone a right to cut another person down. Leah said her parents had always been like that. She said I knew this. She said I should not take it personally. I kept my eyes on the road. I told her this was personal because it was about my place in her life. I told her I needed to know if she saw me the way they saw me. Leah did not answer right away. She said she loved me. She said she did not want conflict. She said she wanted peace. I nodded. I understood what she meant. Peace to her meant no loud scene, no hard choice, no clear line. Peace meant I should absorb the impact and keep smiling. When we got home, I went to the kitchen and put my keys in the same spot as always. The house felt different after that dinner. Not louder, just colder. Leah went to the bedroom. I stayed at the table for a while with my notebook still open. The numbers did not change. The week plan did not change. But something in me did. I looked at my hands on the table. They were steady. I told myself I would stay calm. I told myself I would keep working. I also told myself I would start paying attention to every small thing from now on. After that dinner, I started remembering how we got here. It did not happen in 1 week. It happened in small steps that were easy to excuse. I met Leah when I was 38. I had been on my own for a long time. I worked with my hands. I liked quiet routines. Leah liked calm too, at least at first. She said she felt safe around me. She said I did not act like I had something to prove. Her parents were polite when we first met. They asked what I did. I said I ran a small landscaping crew. I said I did maintenance, cleanups, and seasonal work. Ron nodded and said it was honest work. Mara said she liked a man who could fix things. Back then, I took their words at face value. I thought they were just formal people. I thought I was earning trust slowly. When Leah and I got married, I noticed the first shift. It was small. Ron started asking more detailed questions about money. He asked what I kept in savings. He asked if I had a retirement plan. He asked if I had health coverage that was strong. He spoke like he was advising, but the tone felt like a test. Leah told me he was only protective. She said he had always been that way. I told her I understood. I did not want to start our marriage with conflict. I worked harder. I took extra jobs. I answered calls late. I stayed steady when equipment broke. I paid for repairs right away because I knew delays could ruin a week. I kept my workers paid even when a client pushed payment back. I did it because I was the one responsible. Leah's parents watched everything. If we bought something modest, Mara would mention how Leah used to like nicer things. If we skipped a trip, Ron would say a husband should plan ahead better. If I mentioned a slow month, Owen would say he could never live like that, with income changing. Owen became a constant voice. He offered to help with marketing. He offered to build a website. He offered to introduce me to better clients. He talked about his own office job like it was proof of stability. He never said my work was bad. He just said it was risky. At first, Leah defended me. She said my work was real work. She said I was reliable, but she did it less and less over time. She started speaking like her family without noticing. She would say words like security and standards. She would say we needed to think bigger. She would say people notice things. I tried to keep us grounded. I told her my business was not a hobby. I told her it was a system. It was equipment, contracts, schedules, and trust. I told her the work itself was honest, and the clients were loyal. Leah would nod. Then she would go quiet when her parents called. There were moments that stayed with me. One was a family gathering at Ron's house. He was introducing people the way he always did. He introduced Owen with his job title and his achievements. He introduced Leah with her school history and her potential. Then he introduced me by saying, I did outdoor work and kept busy. He said it like I was a helpful neighbor, not his son-in-law. People smiled politely. I smiled too. I told myself I was being sensitive. Another time, Mara asked Leah in front of me if Leah felt tired from carrying so much. Leah said she was fine. Mara said she only asked because she worried Leah was always the strong one. Leah glanced at me and then looked away. That was the first time I felt like I was sitting across from them alone. The worst part was how normal it became. It turned into a pattern where I was expected to accept these small cuts and still show up for family events with a calm face. Then the business pressure started. The first strange thing was a client cancellation that made no sense. It was a regular customer. I had worked for her for 3 years. She had always paid on time. She called me and sounded tense. She said she was going to pause service. She said she heard I was changing things. I asked what she meant. She said she did not want to get into it. She ended the call quickly. That week, another client canceled a big cleanup. He said he was going to go in another direction. I asked if there was a problem with my work. He said no. He said it was just a decision. He sounded like he was reading a line he had practiced. I started to feel a slow worry, but I did not show it at home. I did not want Leah to feel unstable. I worked longer hours. I called old clients and asked if they needed anything. I offered small free touch-ups to keep goodwill. I told myself it was just the season. Then the supply yard felt different. I have bought mulch and stone from the same place for years. The manager there, Wes Calder, knew me by name. He knew my truck. He knew I paid on time. When I came in one morning, he looked at me longer than normal. He asked how things were going. I told him it was steady. He nodded slowly and said he was glad. I did not understand his tone at first. Then he said he had gotten a few calls asking about my account. He said someone asked if I was behind on payments. He said someone asked if I was having issues. He did not say who called. He did not need to. He said the caller acted like they were connected to me. My stomach tightened. I asked if my account looked bad. Wes said no. He said it was clean. He said the calls were strange. He said he did not answer much. I drove back to my next job with that information sitting in my head like a stone. That night, Leah told me her parents had invited us to a weekend event. It was a small community dinner with local business people. Ron liked those events. He liked to be seen. Leah asked if I could go and just be pleasant. I asked why she said it that way. She said her father had been under stress. She said he did not want drama. I agreed to go. I told myself being present mattered. At the event, I noticed Ron did not stay near me for long. He moved through the room like a host. He introduced Leah to people and spoke warmly about her. When he spoke about me, he kept it short. He made it sound like I was still getting established. He said it like I was early in my life, not a man near 50 who had built his own work from nothing. Later that night, Owen came up to me with a drink and asked about my biggest clients again. He said he had a friend who might want landscaping, but he needed to know if I was solid enough for a high-end property. I told him I was solid. Owen smiled and said he hoped so because reputations matter. When we got in the car, Leah said her family was just trying to help us level up. I told her it did not feel like help. She said I was hearing it wrong. She said I should focus on results. So I did. I focused on results. I worked more. I became even more careful with every invoice and every schedule, but the pressure kept building. A few weeks later, my bank called about my business line of credit. I used that line only for timing gaps. It was a safety net for equipment repairs and big material orders. The bank manager said they were doing a routine review. He said it was standard. When I went in, he was polite but guarded. He talked about risk and market changes. He said there were concerns about stability. I asked what concerns. He said he could not go into detail, but he wanted me to be prepared for changes. I left the bank with my jaw tight and my hands cold on the steering wheel. That evening, Leah asked how my day was. I told her the bank was reviewing my credit line. Leah's face changed fast. She asked if I'd done something wrong. I said no. I said the business was the same as always. Leah said her father had warned her this could happen. She said he had said small businesses can fail fast. She said he had said a man should not take chances with a family. I asked Leah if she had been talking to her father about my finances. She hesitated and said she had shared concerns. She said she needed someone to talk to. She said she had not meant harm. She said she was trying to be responsible. I listened and did not raise my voice. I told her I understood the need to talk. I also told her money talk can turn into gossip quickly, even without intention. Leah said her parents would never gossip. She said they were respected people. The next week I found a small mistake in my scheduling app. A client appointment was changed, moved to a different day, and marked as confirmed. I knew I did not confirm it. I asked my crew if anyone touched my phone. They said no. I reset my passwords. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then another cancellation came. Then another. I started doing something I had never done before. I started writing down everything. I wrote dates of cancellations. I wrote what the client said. I wrote any phrase that sounded repeated. I kept it quiet. I did not tell Leah. I did not want to start a war in my own home. At the same time, Leah changed at home. She was not loud. She was not cruel. She was just less present. She spent more time on her phone. She took calls in the other room. She spoke to me like I was a coworker. When I tried to talk about our future, she said she was tired and we could talk later. When her parents invited us over, Leah started going without me more often. She said it was easier. She said her father got tense when I was there. She said she did not want another heavy dinner. I understood what she was doing. She was making the problem smaller by removing me from the room. It made her life smoother. It also made my place in her life weaker. One afternoon, I ran into Mara at a grocery store near their neighborhood. She smiled and asked how work was. I told her I was busy. She said she was glad, because she had heard things were uncertain. I asked what she had heard. She laughed lightly and said it was just general talk. She said she worried about Leah, because Leah deserved steady ground. She said it like she was caring. Her eyes told me she was planting a story. I drove home that day with my hands tight on the wheel. I could feel something building, but I still did not have a clear shape for it. I just knew my name was being handled by other people. Not long after that, Owen texted me saying he had found a better landscaping company for Ron's friend. He said it was not personal. He said he needed someone who could handle bigger expectations. He said maybe I should stick to simpler yards. That message hit me harder than I expected. It was not the loss of one job. It was the way he spoke, like he had the power to place me on a lower shelf. I did not answer right away. I sat in my garage office and stared at my calendar. I looked at the dates I had circled for jobs. I looked at the gaps forming where work used to be. Then I heard Leah come into the garage. She asked what I was doing. I told her I was checking the schedule. She saw my face and asked if I was upset. I told her I was concerned. I told her too many things were shifting at once. I told her it felt like someone was pushing my business from behind. Leah went quiet. Then she said her father had always said my work was not a real foundation. She said he had always believed Leah would outgrow this life. She said it like she was repeating an old lesson that had finally become true. I looked at her and asked if she agreed with him. She did not answer yes or no. She said she loved me. She said love should not be this hard. She said she did not want to struggle forever. She said she needed to think about what was best for her. I nodded slowly. I told her I understood. I told her I would not beg for my place. I told her I only wanted honesty. Leah said her father was planning to help her make a clean plan if things got worse. She said he knew people who could guide her. She said it would not be messy if I cooperated. I heard the threat inside those calm words. I also heard something else. I heard that they had been planning longer than I knew. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest. It was not panic. It was more like a quiet alarm that did not stop. I made coffee and checked my phone. 2 more clients had sent short messages during the night. Both said they were going to pause service. I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the screen. The words were polite. The timing was not. I wrote their names in my notebook and circled the dates. I did not tell Leah yet. I wanted facts first. I wanted something solid. Leah came into the kitchen. She looked at my face and asked what was wrong. I told her I had more cancellations. She asked if my work quality had changed. I told her no. I told her my crews were doing the same standards as always. Leah said her parents had warned her this could happen. She said small businesses are unstable. She said people like Ron notice risk early. She said it like he was always right. I listened and kept my voice calm. I told her warnings are not the same as causes. Leah did not respond to that. She only said she was tired of uncertainty. I went to my first job site anyway. I kept my body moving and my face neutral. I cleaned beds. I trimmed edges. I loaded debris. The work helped me think. When you do landscaping, you learn the difference between chaos and pattern. A weed patch is chaos. A clean line is pattern. My week was starting to look like pattern and not the kind I liked. Around midday, I got a call from my bank. The manager asked if I could come in for a short meeting. He said it was about my business account and my credit line. He used careful words. He did not sound relaxed. I told him I could come later that afternoon. I finished the job early and drove straight to the bank. The lobby was bright and quiet. The chairs were neat. The people behind desks spoke softly. I checked in and waited. The manager met me with a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. He led me into a small office and closed the door. He said the bank was doing a review and some items had been raised. He said there were concerns about business stability. He said the bank needed to protect itself. I asked what items had been raised. He said he could not share every detail. He said some information came from outside. He said there were notes about client complaints and reliability. He said it like he was repeating a policy. I kept my hands on my knees and my voice even. I told him I had not received formal complaints from my clients. I told him my account history showed consistent payment. I told him I had never missed a loan payment in my life. He nodded, but he did not shift. He said the review would continue and the line of credit would be limited until the bank was satisfied. When I walked out, the air outside felt sharper. I sat in my truck and did not start the engine right away. I watched people walk in and out with their small bags and calm faces. I thought about how easy it is for a story to become concern in a place like this. Once it enters a file, it becomes real to them. I drove to the county office next. I did not plan it at first. I just felt pulled there. I wanted to know if anything else had been placed in my path. The county building had hard floors and plain walls. I took a number and waited behind people holding folders. When my turn came, I went to the counter and asked about my business license status. I said I wanted to confirm my information was up to date. The clerk typed and looked at the screen. Her face changed slightly. She asked for my ID. I gave it to her. She said there were notes on my account. She said there had been complaints filed. She said there was a review in process. I asked what kind of complaints. She said she could not read them to me in full at the counter. She said I could request records. She said there were claims about missed appointments and unprofessional conduct. I felt my jaw tighten. Those words did not match my reality. I asked when the complaints were filed. She gave me dates. I wrote them down in my notebook. The dates lined up with the first wave of cancellations. I asked how the complaints were submitted. She said they came in as online forms and phone calls. She said some had the company name and contact information. That was the moment a line was crossed. Cancellations were painful, but they were part of life. A bank review was stressful, but it could happen. This was different. This was someone trying to stain my name inside a system. I did not argue with the clerk. I thanked her. I asked what steps I should take. She pointed me to a process: request records, respond within deadlines, and keep communication clear. I nodded and left. Back in my truck, I sat with my notebook open on the steering wheel. I stared at the dates. I stared at the short notes I had written. I could feel the pieces connect. Someone was not just talking about me. Someone was acting in ways that reached banks and offices. I drove to the supply yard after that. I wanted to see Wes. I needed a real person, not a counter and a policy. The yard smelled like soil and stone. The air had that familiar dusty weight. I found Wes near the loading area. He looked at me and asked if everything was okay. I told him I was getting strange cancellations, and now my bank and county office were mentioning concerns. I asked if he had gotten more calls. Wes hesitated, then nodded. He said there had been more than a few. He said the caller asked if Wes would still supply me if I fell behind. He said the caller talked like he was protecting the community from risk. He said the caller tried to sound official. I asked if Wes recognized the voice. He said he could not be sure. He said the voice sounded like someone who smiles while speaking. He said he did not give them anything. He said he knew my history. He said he believed in paying attention to patterns, too. I thanked him. I asked if he could forward any messages if he received them. Wes said he would. He also said something quiet that stayed with me. He said people do not make calls like that unless they want a person gone. I drove home with the sun low. When I pulled into the driveway, Leah's car was already there. The house looked normal from the outside. Inside, the air felt different. Leah was in the living room with her phone in her hand. She looked like she had been waiting. She said her parents had talked to her. She said they were worried about her future. She said they did not want her attached to a sinking situation. I told her my business was not sinking. I told her someone was pushing it. Leah said that sounded paranoid. She said my stress was making me see enemies. She said her father only wanted to keep her safe. I asked Leah if she knew about the calls to my suppliers and the complaints at the county office. Her eyes shifted. She said she did not know the details. She said her father had spoken to some people, but only to ask questions. She said he had not done anything wrong. I told her questions can cause damage when they come from the right mouth. Leah said I was blaming her family because I could not accept reality. She said if my business was strong, it would not be so easy to shake. I stood there and felt that quiet clarity again. It was not anger. It was the end of hoping she would protect me from them. I realized she had already chosen the safer side. She was choosing the side with the stronger story. Leah then told me she wanted space. She said she needed time to think. She said her parents offered her a place to stay. She said it would be better if I did not fight it. She said if I tried to make it difficult, it would get messy. I asked what she meant by messy. She said she did not want to explain it. She said she was trying to keep things calm. She said if I cared about her, I would cooperate. I nodded slowly. I told her I heard her. I told her I would not force myself into a place where I was no longer wanted. I told her I would take a few things and leave for the night. Leah looked relieved, like she expected yelling and did not get it. She said she was grateful I was being mature. She said we could talk later. I went to the bedroom and packed a small bag. I took clothes, my toothbrush, my charger, and a few papers I always kept close. I did not take much. I did not want to create a scene. I did not want neighbors watching. I did not want Leah telling a story about me losing control. I walked through the house once before leaving. I looked at the kitchen table where I had done my weekly plans for years. I looked at the spot where I kept my keys. I looked at the framed photos on the wall. Everything looked the same. Nothing felt the same. Outside, the air was cold. I put my bag in the truck and sat behind the wheel. The seat felt worn in the way a good tool feels worn. I started the engine and drove without a plan at first. I ended up in a quiet industrial lot near the edge of town. It was a place where trucks could sit without being bothered. A few other vehicles were parked there. The street lights made the shadows long and flat. I parked and turned off the engine. I sat in the dark and listened to the small sounds of the truck cooling down. The metal clicked softly. My hands rested on the steering wheel. I felt tired in a deep way. I opened my notebook and wrote a short list. Bank review, county complaints, supplier calls, client cancellations, Leah leaving. I wrote dates next to each. I kept it simple. Then I opened my glove box to get a spare pen. Inside was an old folded note I had carried for a long time. I almost never looked at it. It had a case number and a year written in faded ink. The year was 1987. I stared at it for a long moment. It was not a comfort. It was a reminder. It was a piece of my life that I had locked away because it felt too heavy to explain to anyone. I put it back and closed the glove box. I did not need to understand it fully in that moment. I only knew my life had more layers than Leah's family could imagine. They saw a quiet man with a small business. They thought that was all. I leaned back and looked out through the windshield. I thought about how Ron talked about respect and standards. I thought about how he used calm words to press down on people. I thought about the bank manager's careful face. I thought about the clerk at the county office and how her screen had already been influenced by someone else's story. I did not feel rage. I felt a clean decision form inside me. I was done trying to win through patience and silence. I was going to handle this through the systems they were using. I was going to respond the right way, with records, timelines, and process. I took out my phone and searched for a number I had not called in years. It was a lawyer I knew from a long time ago, someone who believed in facts and procedure. My thumb hovered for a second, then I pressed call. It went to voicemail. I kept my message short. I said my name. I said I needed guidance. I said I believed my business and reputation were being targeted. I said I would be available in the morning. Then I ended the call and set the phone down. I sat in the truck and listened to the quiet again. The night felt long, but my mind felt clearer than it had in months. I pulled my jacket tighter, closed my eyes, and let that clarity settle in place. I woke up in my truck before sunrise. My neck was stiff. The windows were fogged from my breathing. I sat up slowly and listened. A truck passed on the road. Somewhere nearby, a machine started up. Life moved like it always did, even when yours feels stuck. I drove to a gas station, washed my face in the restroom, and bought a plain coffee. I sat in the truck with the cup in my hand and opened my notebook again. I did not write feelings. I wrote facts. I wrote times, names, and short notes. I wrote what the bank manager said. I wrote what the county clerk said. I wrote what Wes told me at the supply yard. I kept the writing neat. It helped me think. My phone showed a missed call from the lawyer I had contacted. I called back right away. He answered and asked me to explain in simple terms. I told him my business was being squeezed by rumors and false complaints. I told him my wife had moved out and her family was pushing her to separate fast. I told him I needed to protect my name and keep my business alive. He did not react with drama. He asked me what proof I had. I said I had dates, client cancellations, and a supplier who received strange calls. I said I could request records from the county. I said the bank was acting on concerns, but would not fully explain. He told me to stay calm and stop speaking from memory. He told me to build a timeline and keep everything in one place. He told me to avoid arguments and avoid emotional messages. He told me to communicate in short, clear lines. After the call, I went to a small motel near the industrial area. It was not nice, but it was clean. I paid for a few nights. The room smelled like soap and old carpet. I sat at the small desk and set my notebook down. I plugged in my phone. Then I opened my laptop. I created a simple folder system. One folder for clients, one for suppliers, one for bank, one for county, one for home and separation. I did not put anything dramatic in the names. I wanted it to look normal, because normal is what systems respect. I started with the clients. I made a list of everyone who canceled in the last months. I wrote down what they said and when they said it. I noticed patterns. The phrases were too similar. Several mentioned changes that I never announced. A few mentioned complaints that I never heard about. One mentioned a warning call from my office. That did not happen through me. I called 2 clients I trusted the most. I did not pressure them. I asked simple questions. I asked if anyone contacted them about my business. I asked if they could remember the time and the number if it was on their phone. One of them said a man called and acted like he was helping them avoid problems. Another said they received a message that sounded official, like it came from a business service. Both sounded uncomfortable. Both said they did not want trouble. I told them I understood. I thanked them for their time. I asked if they could forward anything they still had, like a message or a missed call list. I did not demand it. I only asked. Then I moved to suppliers. I called Wes again and asked if he could write down the dates of those calls to his yard. He said he would check his notes and talk to his staff. He also told me something important. He said Owen had been in the yard recently, asking about pricing and who is reliable. Wes said he did not take it seriously at the time. Now he did. When I heard that, I stayed quiet for a moment. It did not shock me. It only confirmed what I already felt. The sabotage was not random. It had a face and a reason. I called another vendor who serviced my equipment. The shop owner said he got a strange call too, someone asking if my accounts were current. He said he did not share anything, but it made him wonder. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was handling it. By late morning, I had 3 separate people telling me the same kind of story. Someone was calling around using my name and trying to create doubt. I drove to the county office, requested license records politely, noted timelines. Calm, procedural, no arguments. At the bank, I asked for written review details, offered financials, but protected client lists. Understood. Risk decisions shielded by overall information. On site, I instructed crew to log strange calls, route inquiries to me. They respected steadiness over noise. Leah texted about quick mediation, her father's mediator, clean separation. I replied, proper channels only, no rush decisions. Lawyer advised, collect proof legally, avoid confrontation. Ron's type overplays, let them air. Suppliers confirmed suspicious calls using Ron's phrases, community risk. Mediation, Leah and Ron pushed speed. I requested fairness, time. Ron cornered me. Accept reality or face embarrassment. I stayed neutral. More careful actions, notebooks, dates, backups. Then, an invitation, chamber luncheon honoring Ron for leadership. I attended, not for drama, but because this room was his real audience. Presented folder to council, timelines, vendor statements, coordinated complaints tracing to Owen Ron. Spoke briefly. Detailed interference, false claims damaging my business. Mentioned federal locate and notify confirmation. Proof systems were already validating my standing. Ron rose. MC withheld mic. Counsel escorted him out for review. Leah stared, stunned. Owen avoided eyes. I sat calmly as the room shifted from celebration to procedure. Folder circulated officially. My name entered formal channels Ron couldn't control. Walking out, air crisp,